give us a little background on how you came to be interested in this genocide?
I became interested in genocide because it happened so many times. It happened to the Armenians, and after the Armenians, Hitler took action.
A few lines of a White House statement which could shake up the complex relationship between two crucial NATO members. Joe Biden has recognized the massacres of Armenians by Ottoman forces in 1915 as a genocide.
This crime isn't just about those who were killed. Their property was confiscated too. Their churches were destroyed.
My pa buried 15 of his relatives in the desert. 15 of them. They died one by one from starvation and illness. Well, they were a great big bunch that moved at one time. But they spread out. When they say 1.5 million, that's true.
The Armenian community has been lobbying for this recognition for a long time. What kind of reaction has there been where you are in Yerevan?
So there has been a lot of cheering in the streets and in people's homes, a lot of tears, actually, a lot of reflection, relief, a sense that a certain humiliation is over.
It's important because we cannot forget. It's happening again today, it's happening in Armenia, in Nagorno-Karabakh, and the international community has done nothing. So we must always stand up to say, let us remember, let us not forget.
The Turkish thought that their deliberate massacre of the Armenians wasn't a genocide because they killed the Armenians who they thought were traitors. That was, until they started killing innocent Armenian civilians that had nothing to do with World War I, making countries think differently of the Turkish. Were the Turkish right to rather be safe than sorry, or was it all in their heads? The Armenian Genocide from 1915 to 1923 in the Ottoman Empire is related to debate and diplomacy. The Armenian Genocide is connected to debate because the Turkish debated on whether the Armenians were traitors, and other countries debated on if what the Turkish were doing was right. And it demonstrates diplomacy because 33 countries have officially recognized the Armenian Genocide. Since most Armenians were Christians at the time, the Young Turks, a group that formed in the Ottoman Empire because they wanted to modernize it, thought that they would turn against them and fight with the Russians on the other side of the war. The Armenian Genocide is related to debate because the Turkish debated amongst themselves about whether or not Armenians were traitors and what to do should they be traitors. This resentment was compounded by suspicions that the Christian Armenians would be more loyal to Christian governments, that of the Russians, for example, who shared an unstable border with Turkey, than they were to the Ottoman Caliphate. These suspicions grew more acute as the Ottoman Empire crumbled. This quote is an example of debate. At the time, the Turkish Sultan, Abdülhamid II, was in charge of Turkey. The Sultan was obsessed with devotion and loyalty, so it angered him whenever it felt like there was distrust between him and another group. And, because the majority of Armenians were Christian, the Sultan was enraged and filled with distrust, causing him to debate on whether or not the Armenians were traitors, and if they were, what punishment for them should he carry out. When the Turkish began killing off obviously innocent Armenians throughout the Ottoman Empire just because they were Armenian, other countries began to become suspicious. Additionally, the Armenian Genocide is related to debate because at the time people were debating on whether or not if what the Turkish were doing was right. We therefore send you this appeal in the confident hope that the desperate condition of these unfortunate people will move you to give them all of the help in your power. This quote is an example of debate. In 1915, Charles Johnson was the Lord Mayor of London and president of the Armenian Refugees Fund. He thought that what the Turkish were doing to the Armenians was atrocious and wrong, so he opened a fund of money dedicated to helping Armenians that got injured or deported. Considering that the Armenians couldn't fend for themselves given the situation, the fact that someone stopped and realized that the Turkish might be wrong in their actions is a true moment of debate. People around the world took a survey about whether they recognized significant events in world history, and one of them was about the Armenian Genocide. At length, the Armenian Genocide is related to diplomacy because 33 different countries have officially and diplomatically recognized the Armenian Genocide as a genocide and as an event that actually took place. Other countries have yet to recognize it. In the following years, the legislators of countries such as Belgium, Canada, Cyprus, France, Greece, and Russia adopted resolutions affirming the historical record on the Armenian Genocide. Acknowledgement also came through declarations by heads of states and pronouncements by legislators. This quote demonstrates diplomacy. From 1975 all the way to our present day, important people have been reaching out to the public to state that they've officially recognized the killings of over 1.5 million Armenians as genocide. As a final point, the Armenian Genocide is related to debate because the Turkish were suspicious of the Armenians' actions of independence, which caused other people to start questioning the Turkish motives when they put the genocide into effect. And diplomacy is shown in this topic because 33 countries have publicly announced that they recognize the Armenian Genocide as existing and actually happening. Victimization and genocide perpetrated and denied in one part of the world can become the breeding ground for greater crimes against humanity in another part of the world. It was my responsibility to educate and inform so that history won't be repeated. Michael Hagopian, one of the few survivors of the genocide, wants people to understand what genocide means and how cruel it is. He states that if there are people around the world that are ignorant of their history or refuse to accept it, who knows how history might repeat itself if we are uneducated. Turkey still denies their part in actions through 1915 to 1923 as not a genocide and just actions during World War I. But the fact still points to a genocide, and it seems that 33 other countries also feel the same.
I wish my mother could have told you these things herself. And you know, your children, don't let them forget the massacre, whatever you can. That's why I've kept all the church books, all the papers and everything. I've got more stuff than the church has got. But let the kids know what their heritage came from, so they never forget it.